Augusta, the F4 of Septimon, wielding the powers of Zawardel to stop enemies in their place and deliver a massacre of slashes to end them before they even know what hit them. She represents the sun, and is only half of the future team involving the sun and moon, and today we'll be discussing only the Radiance. My name is VoidEnigma, and we'll be going over Augusta's kit, echoes, weapons, and team options. She is the second Electro character to have time stop shenanigans, so I'm wondering if this is going to be a trend. Nonetheless, Augusta features supreme power and authority behind her kit, so let's explain it. Make sure to subscribe and like the video, and let's bolt into the bounds of Augusta. Augusta is an Electro Broadblade user who specializes in heavy attacks across her kit. She uses her liberation to deal significant damage while also utilizing her forte to unleash heavy attacks throughout her entire rotation. She has two resonance liberations. One functions as normal, and it doesn't have an animation, while the other is when she maxes out her manifest. But what is manifest? Augusta has a completely unique and separate gauge, and it's filled in a few ways. Using her forte bar to fill it up continuously until you finally unlock her Griffin dive, and using another character's outro skill when they are under the effects of Augusta's outro skill. The manifest gauge is capped at 2, so you will need to achieve these two conditions to use her second liberation. To get the first, you have to fill multiple different gauges. Firstly, her normal forte. You'll see this easily get built up, and when you actually build it up, you'll use a heavy attack and you'll do an attack. But there's actually another gauge. You're going to be filling this up continuously until it's finally maxed out, and then you'll actually unlock her enhanced resonance skill, which sends her into the air with the help of her griffin, and she will stand on air and hit that alpha pose. After she achieves this, then she'll unlock her second liberation. Once you activate this, time is stopped for a few seconds. The enemy cannot react or even move. Everything stops in the entire world. In this period of time, Augusta will deliver a flurry of slashes to the foe, before unleashing a thunderous strike to finish off the enemy. It's important to note that her second liberation is fueled purely off of manifest, and not energy regen. So energy regen stats aren't particularly great on her. They're still useful, but just not quite necessary. Her core gameplay consists of building her manifest through her gameplay mechanics, and then swapping into Augusta to trigger her enhanced resonance liberation on the enemy. The most important thing to take away from this is that Augusta needs to trigger her outro skill to swap into another character, and then that character needs to stay on the field in order to trigger their outro skill. This adds a layer of strict rotation that Augusta's teams need to follow, because if you lose this enhanced liberation attack, then you're losing a significant portion of the damage, so you need to pay very close attention to at least this portion of the kit. Good thing I'm here to tell you how the rotation works, right? So when you enter combat, normally you'll start with one manifest, because when she's out of combat, after about 4 seconds, her manifest will be maxed out and her other passives will be maxed, of course. So you don't have to do anything crazy to get that first stack of manifest. It's from the second one onward that you need to abide by this rotation. Once you complete the first time stop liberation, you want to swap to your next resonator. They will get Augusta's buff, which will increase their damage by about 15%, and it locks them into a certain role. Most of the time, this will be Shorekeeper, because she's the one who's going to be refreshing the buffs, or Verena, but either way, you're going to mostly your buffer. You will not swap off of Shorekeeper when you're actually swapping into her. Doing so will put you back tremendously and cause you to lose a ton of damage. Make sure that you stay on Shorekeeper, completely max out her Concerto, trigger her liberation, and then swap off and use an outro skill. This ensures that Augusta gets a stack of manifest, which is half the way there to getting her time stop liberation. If you swap off during this time period, then you will not get that stack of manifest, which means that Augusta will have to spend double the amount of time on field to get her liberation again. Doing so will also make sure that you lose out on all of the buffs, and this is just not the way that we want to go. The goal is to get off at least one time stop liberation per rotation, and this is the only way to do so. Her rotation is quite strict, and if you misstep, you will lose a ton of damage, but after you complete this action, you are free to do whatever you want. You can quick swap and do whatever other shenanigans that you want, but this part is important. She does have another cool mechanic with her intro skills, so let's chat about her echoes, because Augusta not only has a griffin to help her in combat, but she also has an echo capable of a very special interaction. Nightmare echoes are a thing, and Augusta has a new set. 3-piece set, which means she'll be using the 3-piece Crown of Valor set alongside the 2-piece Void Thunder set. You're going to want to go with either crit rate or crit damage for the substat, depending on your overall weapon. You'll go with electro or attack for the elite pieces, and attack for the common pieces, of course. So it's just simple resonator building, nothing really has changed. But what Overlord echo are we going to actually use? While Augusta is considered the queen of the gladiator arena, the false sovereign is most definitely not, but this false king will be assisting Augusta in combat. When Augusta casts her intro skill, this faker will come in and deal a significant jolt of damage. Pretty handy to have an echo automatically attack for you, and this guy does look pretty badass. Echo substat priorities is crit rate or crit damage, then attack and attack percent, and heavy attacks, because that's really what her whole kit consists of. A bit of energy regen does actually help, but she doesn't necessarily need it. Weapons are up next on the list of enhancing Augusta, and her signature looks absolutely amazing. Let's see if it lives up to his expectations. It doesn't, and for one reason and one reason only. Now, don't get me wrong, the Thunderflare Dominion is a powerful weapon, offering a 35% damage ignore, defense ignore, 12% attack and 20% heavy attack damage bonus, and a nice 12% crit rate substat. But you know what else is quite similar? Verdant Summit, which gives 48% crit damage, 12% attribute damage, and 48% heavy attack bonus. And guess what? Augusta can use both these weapons perfectly. They're quite interchangeable, but Thunderflare does actually come ahead by a small margin because of the massive defense ignore that it does offer, but you can literally use any of these weapons on Augusta. Now, for those of you who consistently buy the Battle Pass, Kuro Games has added 5 new weapons to the shop, and the Broadblade is a perfect match for Augusta. Aureate Zenith gives a 40% crit damage boost, a nice attack buff, and an even better heavy attack boost, and all of these buffs are attained by simply casting her Liberation a couple of times, which she easily does. This is an amazing 4-star weapon option, but it does require the Battle Pass, so keep that in mind. Another Battle Pass weapon is actually Autumntra, which is a very decent option, but at this point, you may as well just get the other weapon mentioned because it's just significantly better. But if you did already have a bunch of boxes left over, you could definitely give her this. Other than that, Lustrous Razor is always an option, but its buffs are just not made for Augusta at all. It will be quite lacking in overall damage amp, but it's still an option at the end of the day. So I would definitely recommend that you get yourself either her signature or Gion's weapon if you don't already have it, but you can rest easy swapping Gion's weapon between Augusta and himself. Kind of a great catch, right? Weapons claim, teams to build, so let's pop over to the team section. One thing I did mention in the kit summary is Augusta's outro skill, a 15% universal damage buff to whoever comes in. That means she can literally buff any of the famous quick swappers as well as being able to buff her sub DPS, is what I want to say, but that's not really how it works. Unfortunately, Augusta's outro skill buffing the team by 15% is great and all, but another caveat is attached to her outro skill. When you go into this outro skill, you need to stay on that character and not swap off of that character and trigger their outro in order to get a stack of manifest. Nonetheless, she still has quite a few options. Here is where I normally talk about someone who would greatly buff Augusta, but I don't quite know that yet, as Iuno is still kind of in the air as to what she might be able to do. But when she gets released, I'll be able to update you, but come on, it's the sun and the moon, so they've got to be good together, right? Until she's released, we'll have to consider other options though, and her best buffer is going to be hands down Phrolova. But let's talk about Mortefi first, which is going to be your premium heavy attack buffer, especially if you don't have Phrolova. Mortefi gives coordinated attacks and a very solid buff, and we all know that Mortefi is a solid 4-star unit. If you give him a decent weapon, he'll be able to do decent damage and really buff Augusta to an insane caliber. Other than that, of course, we have the newest cast, Phrolova, which is a surprisingly great teammate for her. Thanks to her heavy attack outro buff, Augusta will really appreciate Hecate weaving in attacks as well, and it's definitely a great option. The stagnation will be out of this world with these two together. Now some more niche options. Of course, Yin Lin. Yin Lin gives Augusta quite a few things. An electro damage amplification buff, coordinated attacks, but the downside is that Augusta's rotation requires you to swap into that character and trigger their outro, and it does kind of take a little bit from quick swap, but once you actually complete that interaction, then you're free to quick swap all the way. It's unfortunate that Augusta does indeed buff the incoming character by 15%, however, doing so, you have to buff the character that you want to set up your rest of your rotation. So, Shorekeeper getting a 15% buff is not much. I mean, you can help her Liberation a little bit, but her Liberation is not doing substantial damage anyways, and if it's Verena, well, if you're buffing 1 by 15%, I guess it's still 1.5. I'll be going over a ton of more team and rotation guides, which he actually gets released, and I can play around with a lot more things, so subscribe and stay tuned because she might have some hidden options. You never know. Overall, Augusta is an insanely fun and dynamic character with many kit interactions, and so many different moves, which climaxes to the pinnacle of Wuthering. She has so many different mechanics in her kit that it can be confusing, but it does come together smoothly once you realize how to actually use it. I can't wait to see how she pairs with Iuno, or if they even pair together, because that might be when she unlocks her full potential. Subscribe so you don't miss out on future guides from yours truly, and thank you so much for watching. Like if you enjoyed the video, and leave a comment on how Kuro Games keeps elevating their characters. Like, this is just out of this world, right? Until next time, Enigma out.